Alright, just the person wanted to see. Come on in. Get in here. Have a seat. You doing okay? Of course you are. You're above ground. You're still breathing. And you're about to watch another video from me, Screwface Capone. Remember, anytime you're above ground, anytime you're breathing, it's always going to be a good day. No matter what's going on in your life, because you have 24 more hours to make it happen. And plus, anytime you watch a video from me, your day gets a million times better. So how can you not be having a good day, right? Anyway, hope you guys had a great Halloween out there. You doing your dress up, doing your cosplaying, doing your trick-or-treating. I dressed up as a gaming YouTuber. Believe that. Anyway, I wanted to get this video out by Halloween because of its subject matter, obviously. But too much stuff going on right now. I just couldn't do it. But when it comes to Castlevania, there's never a wrong day of the year. Any day is as good as another. And if I would have had this up on Christmas, it's going up on Christmas. Believe that. So as you know, several weeks ago I did a video about Castlevania games that look like Castlevania, feel like Castlevania, smell like Castlevania, taste like Castlevania, but aren't Castlevania, and aren't even made by Konami. The goal was to explore what the game would look like in different genres. That was part of it. So kind of like, what if Castlevania was this? Or what if Castlevania was that? And that video proved to be very, very popular. So I decided to do a follow-up. Number one, I knew I was going to have to do one anyway because there was a lot of great titles that I left off the first list. And a lot of you hopped into the comments with some pretty great suggestions. So there's some pretty cool games, so I decided to check them out. Now, there are some suggestions that I left. There are some games I left off this list, namely the Toziuha games and a bunch of Metroidvanias. Because number one, I might be giving the Metroidvania games their own entry, and I didn't want this to be all one type. I wanted to explore different genres that just have a little piece of Castlevania. The look, the feel, the vibe, the gameplay, just whatever. Also, I know some people suggested a number of fan games. I'll be giving them their video one day soon. But for now, we're going to hop right into this new list. So this is Castlevania, but it's not Castlevania. Enjoy. Shout out to Big Edward in the comments for recommending this game. The Legendary Axe and its sequel are a pair of hack and slash action games that are released on the PC Engine, or as us Yankees know it, the TurboGrafx-16. Released by Victor Musical Industries, the Legendary Axe was a launch title for the US TurboGrafx that was released in 1989. While the game has more of a swords and sorcery theme, its gameplay is similar to Castlevania. Playing as a warrior named Brogan, you set out to rescue your girlfriend from an evil cult. Your main weapon is an axe that runs on a strength meter. When you press the attack button, you do a different amount of damage depending on how full the meter was when you pressed it. You can increase the length of it by grabbing certain items. So you have to choose between pressing the button quickly and doing a small amount of damage, or waiting until it fills up and doing the most damage. A sequel would be released in 1990, and this had a different theme along with a darker atmosphere. There was a slight change to the gameplay, and this time players had multiple weapons that they can find. This game kind of felt a bit more like Conan the Barbarian, whereas the first game kind of had a more caveman feel to it. Either way though, if you got a TurboGrafx-16, then these two games are two hidden gems for it, so definitely check them out, especially if you like games like Castlevania. Speaking of consoles made by NEC, this next game is for the PC 9800, which was a series of personal computers that were only released in Japan. I might have to give it its own video someday, but for now I want to talk about Rusty, which is a side-scrolling action game that was developed and released by a little-known company called C-Lab. By the way, shout out to QuanQuinn3822 in the comments for suggesting this game. The best way to describe this game is a sexier version of Castlevania, although it's not X-rated like Midnight Castle Succubus was. Playing as the titular heroine, you set out to rescue kidnapped girls and stop an evil vampire from being resurrected. Between both of these videos, this game is perhaps one of the closest to Castlevania, and that's not a bad thing. Now, this game had a bit more open design, as several of the game's stages have you searching the level for keys. The keyboard controls will take some getting used to, but this is another hidden gem on a system that you probably haven't even heard of until today. Good luck finding a PC 98 and a copy of the game to play this on, but thankfully you can emulate this game. Matter of fact, there's even an English patch available. I'll put a link in the description to a place where you can find the game. Shout out to RUZ54 for reminding me about this game. This was an NES title that was developed by Thinking Rabbit and released in 1988 for Japan and would come to North America in 1990. My parents bought this for me when I was a kid years back. While I didn't like it at first, it was one of those games that grew on me over time, and if you play the game you can see the similarities to Castlevania. The game's plot largely depends on which version you're playing. The North American version takes place in a post-apocalyptic future in which the king's 8 evil dukes, led by a woman named Ruth, steal his magic gems, throwing the world into disarray. In the Japanese version, the game takes place in the years before World War I, and the 8 Eyes are a group of artifacts that were stolen by a gang who's led by Ruth, and this gang calls themselves the Children of Lucifer. Players take control of Orin the Falconer and his pet falcon Curtis, as they're known in America, or Julian James Bond and his pet Eagle Cutlass, if you're playing the Japanese version and you set out to stop them. Each of the dukes resides in a different part of the world, and you have to take on the first 7 before you can access the final stage, which is called the House of Ruth. Each time you beat one of the dukes, you gain their sword, and since each duke is only vulnerable to one sword, there's an order you have to take them on, making this similar to Mega Man in a way. At the end of the game, you have to place the jewels in the correct order too. Oh, and you have to beat the game 3 times to see the true ending. The game has a unique co-op mode where one player controls Orin and the second controls the pet Falcon and basically fly around doing dive bombs. One thing I liked about this game is the music. Each stage has 3 pieces, one for the castle entrance, another for the stage itself, and one more for the boss battle. Speaking of the bosses, after you beat them, you get to sit down with them and have a cup of tea. For the supposed Children of Lucifer, or evil dukes, they're certainly pretty classy. Decades after its release, Pico Interactive would gain the rights to publish the game, and you can find it on Steam, the Evercade Pico Interactive Collection Volume 1, and various plug-and-play devices, such as the Legends Gamer Portable. While the game is far from perfect, it definitely has its charm. So really, I guess you can consider this Castlevania if you bought it from the dollar store. So for this entry, I'm referring to the original SNES version rather than the 2021 remake, because to me, the original SNES version felt pretty close to Super Castlevania 4, and I'm guessing a lot of you retro fans already know about this game, but for the few that don't, here's a crash course. Actraiser was developed by Quintet and published by Enix, over a decade before they merged with Square. And this was a hack and slash action platformer that mixed it up with light simulation elements between the levels. Playing as the Master, or God as he's known in Japan, you set out to stop Tanzra, or Satan as he's known in Japan. So as you old school Nintendo heads know, this was one of the games that fell victim to Nintendo's censorship of religious themes. Between each level you have to guide the development of your worshippers, guiding them in building their cities. While the action gameplay was on point for its time, it was these simulation segments that truly made this stand out among the early SNES lineup. Now back to the remake that came out a few years ago. While it doesn't have the same feeling that the original did, I still recommend it anyway because it expands upon its simulation mode greatly, even adding tower defense element. But if you haven't done so already, check out the original SNES version, you'll love it. Nine Years of Shadows, developed by Mexican-based Halberd Studios, is a Metroidvania that came out earlier this year and flew under the radar. And that's a shame too, because the game looks and sounds gorgeous. Playing as a young warrior named Europa, you set out to restore color back to a world of darkness. Aided by your ghost teddy bear companion, you explore a huge castle and take on dozens of enemies. All the Metroidvania hallmarks are here, particularly gaining new abilities that open up new areas and places that you can backtrack to. The game is also challenging without being overwhelming. Again, I must point out how awesome the game's soundtrack is. One of the composers is, of course, Michiru Yamane, a name no doubt familiar to Castlevania fan. You can even meet her in the game as an NPC who can assist you. Other composers in the game are Miguel Hassan and Noriko Hibino, who also worked on Metal Gear Solid. You can find it on Steam, and it might even still be on sale as of this video. Blasphemous, the 2019 action platformer from the Game Kitchen, can best be described as Catholicism to the extreme. Playing as the penitent one, you set out to save the world of Stodia from an entity known as the Miracle. You'll upgrade your powers, travel vast and strange environments, and battle bizarre-looking enemies, including a giant baby, as you play through the game. The game's atmosphere and scenery are inspired by Roman Catholicism, in particular Spanish Holy Week, and you can see it in just about every aspect of the game. Everything and everyone in this game is driven by pain, repentance, and suffering, and the challenge is just as brutal as the game itself. Thankfully, it's that Dark Souls style challenge where every misstep serves to make you try that much harder to get it right the next time. Since its 2019 release, the game has seen several free updates along with a sequel that came out earlier this year. So if you like these Metroidvania style games, check this one out. V Rising is a survival crafting game that was released last year in early access, and will be coming into version 1 early next year. The game can best be described as a mashup of Castlevania, Diablo, Ark Survival Evolved, and Stardew Valley. Playing as a newly awakened vampire, you set out to build your castle and spread fear throughout the land. And oh yeah, drink lots and lots of blood. You'll do battle with creatures, humans, and the undead as you gather resources to make your castle bigger and bigger. You can hunt down special enemies to drink their blood and make your vampire even more powerful with new techniques. You can either play alone or play with others online in both player versus player and player versus enemy environments. Survival crafting games are a dime a dozen, but V Rising is one of the most unique and it's one of the best. Think of it as Castlevania, but you get to play as Dracula and you get to build Castlevania. How awesome is that? Nosferatu is a Super Nintendo game that was released in Japan in 1994 and would come to the US the following year. You play as Kyle, who sets out to rescue his girlfriend from Nosferatu, or Count Dracula as he's known in the Japanese version. The gameplay is similar to titles like Prince of Persia or Flashback, but with the added addition of rudimentary beat-em-up gameplay elements. The game was praised for its graphics, sound, and animation, but criticized for its high level of difficulty, as the game's levels were timed and there was no save feature or level checkpoints. The game's rooms had an almost puzzle element to them, and you would even encounter boss battles every once in a while. The game also had multiple endings depending on how well you did. So yeah, this game is what Castlevania would be if it was a cinematic platformer. If you want to find a game these days, on eBay it will set you back an average of $123, depending on the condition, but if you know how I know, you might be better off emulating it. That way you'll have access to save states. But yeah, if you like Castlevania but wish there were more like Out of This World, check it out. Demon's Crest is a Super Nintendo game that came out in 1994 and stars Firebrand, an enemy from Capcom's Ghosts and Goblins series. You set out to find 6 magical crests which will give you power over the demon world. Along with the gothic horror theme, the game also had RPG elements and even some light Metroidvania style gameplay. Throughout the game, you'll gain new magic spells, along with powers that let you change form and revisit certain areas. You'll explore huge levels, do battle with several bosses, and earn one of multiple endings. You can find it as part of the Switch Online Super Nintendo lineup. This is a Capcom game, so you know it's going to be good. It's got the horror, it's got the eerie atmosphere. So in a lot of ways, Demon's Crest is what a 2D Castlevania on Super Nintendo would feel like if Capcom made it. Finally, shout out to Zunil Tepesh, and I know I messed up your pronunciation, for recommending me this game. Toziuha Night, Dracula's Revenge, and I'm pretty sure I messed up that pronunciation, is pretty much Castlevania in everything but name. More specifically, it feels like it could have been a lost Game Boy Advance Castlevania game. Playing as a young woman named Xandria, you set out to Dracula's castle in order to take revenge. You're armed with a whip and a number of sub-weapons, just like Castlevania. You'll explore huge creepy environments and battle tons of enemies and bosses. The graphics are gorgeous and the music fits the game perfect. The difficulty is brutal, but if you like these old school games, you wouldn't have it any other way. The game is pretty cheap too. You can find it on both Steam and itch.io. The developer, who's clearly a fan of Castlevania and even admits as much, is hard at work on a sequel, which looks to improve on the game on every level, and the demo is available now. So yeah, this is probably the closest we'll ever get to a Castlevania game that's not made by Konami. While the game isn't perfect, there are some bugs. The game is still a treat if you're a Castlevania fan and you miss the old style of gameplay and action. So that wraps it up for another great video. If you made it this far, I got a homework assignment for you. I want you to go in the comments section and drop the name of your favorite Konami video game or franchise. Maybe it's Castlevania, maybe it's Contra, maybe it's Silent Hill, maybe it's Metal Gear, maybe it's even PES, who knows, but let me know in the comments. If you want to know mine, obviously my favorite franchise is Castlevania. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, and I'm sure you did, I want you to do me a solid and hit that thumbs up icon and make sure you share it around, let everybody know, and even tell me how awesome it is in the comments. Let me know your thoughts, especially if you know of a game that I should take a look at. Like I said, I'm probably going to be doing some more follow-up lists, including one dedicated to fan games, so you're going to want to watch out for that. Anyway, for those of you guys who are new to the channel, I like to cover indie games, I like to cover retro titles, I do previews, I do reviews, I do the occasional Let's Play, I like to do gaming documentaries, and of course, lists such as the one you just watched. So if that sounds good to you, you want to join the Mafia, hit that big red subscribe button, and I'll make you a made man. If you do one better, hit the bell icon, that way you'll be the first to know whenever I put out new content. Also, my link tree is in the description so you can find me on social media. You can also subscribe to the podcast that I do, Will Talks About Games. Anyway, enough of that. Have a great rest of your week. Until next time, I'm Audi 51000G, kinfolk.